But what is different though is how the world responds to his condition, and specifically, who. His classmates make fun of him and deride him for not having a quirk, and the number one culprit of all of them is one Cant Bakugo, who trust, we're gonna get to him one day. We're so gonna get to that piece of work. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. We're finally gonna talk about everyone's favorite rage beast from My Hero Academia, Katsuki Bakugo. Now, if you haven't watched my video on Deku yet, go ahead and check it out, because I have something special planned for everyone during Thanksgiving, and it will make more sense to watch that video as well as this one. How are you gonna know when that surprise drops? You gotta do the YouTube thing, man. Subscribe, share, like, and ring the bell. That way, when the surprise I have in mind comes out, you'll be in the loop. But in the meantime, let's focus in on the human grenade here. Bakugo has been on quite a journey in the story of My Hero Academia. He has gone from being the favorite son in every situation he's been in, to being one of the many talented youngsters at UA, to becoming the student who's now just a little behind everyone else. And this is a fact that even at this point in the anime, he's still having a hard time coming to terms with. And it makes sense. Going from star pupil to needing to go to summer school is a massive clout drop. And for someone like Cant, it can be especially painful since he's never really failed at anything in his life before. Everything has come easily to him, and his transcendent talent has carried him through life. But I believe that Bakugo's academic block has more to do than just simply failing a test. The anime has been hinting at it for the better part of 4 seasons now, but the time has come to bring up the exploding elephant in the room. The bottom line is that if Bakugo doesn't turn things around, he's on the fast track to becoming not like his idol All Might, but the current number 1 hero, Endeavor. Yes, the truth is that punk rock Bomberman has a lot more in common with the Flame Hero than with the greatest of all heroes. So does that mean that Cant-chan's destiny is set in stone? Is Bakugo just doomed to make the same mistakes that Endeavor has made while reaching the same goal? Or is there some hope for him that he could change? I'm the guidance guy, and it's time we took a look at this. And be careful of them spoilers for My Hero Academia. In order to show how Bakugos Past is sending him down a road that Endeavor's own son is determined to never walk, we need to take a look at the Blast Boy's past to get a better picture of how he got where he is now and compare that to his potential future self. For starters, Cant-chan's path to heroism seemed practically guaranteed from the start. We see that Bakugo started to have his quirk manifest at around the time everyone else does, by the time he started kindergarten. But for him, when people saw his quirk, they instantly realized that his superpower wasn't some basic ability. In the anime's words, his quirk was described as flashy. It was the kind of quirk that would make him a top-shelf do-gooder later on in life. This quickly made Bakugo the popular kid in school. Whenever we see Chibi Explosion Man in flashbacks, he's always flanked by his entourage. He's always the leader, setting the tone for what the group was going to do. And in the classroom from the start of his school days, he was lauded for his impressive quirk. He was put on a pedestal. And let's not get it twisted. Even though Bakugo was put on a pedestal, it's not like he didn't earn his spot. We see throughout the series that even though he's full of himself, he ain't no dummy. Because even though the explosion quirk itself sounds a little pedestrian, being able to sweat an explosive liquid from your palms and then ignite it on command, we've seen time and again Bakugo create many battle applications for his quirk, such as being able to fly and concentrating his blast to create his signature move. He's also very adept at understanding the battle strategies of his enemies and allies alike, and thus can go into a brawl not just with the strength advantage, but with an intellectual one as well. But it's with all these life buffs that we quickly see how the dark side of Lord Explosion Murder comes to the forefront. Specifically because he's been lauded as the greatest thing ever, he sees himself as being better than everyone else. His entire life he's been told that he's destined for greatness and that the sky's the limit, and his response to that is to fully embrace that narrative and then treat everyone else as beneath him. He lives as if he's the main character of My Hero Academia, with everyone else being not members of the supporting cast, but merely extras. I mean, he even says as much a few times. And add to that a highly competitive streak and a superiority complex, and you have a pretty insufferable human being. Or to put it another way, you have Endeavor. At this point in My Hero Academia, not much is known about Endeavor's childhood, but we can take some ideas as to how the Japanese Human Torch got to where he is. Let's start with his quirk, Hellflame, which, when you break it down, is essentially pyrokinesis, being able to manipulate every aspect of fire, the shape it takes, where it goes, and even how hot you want it to be. It's definitely a powerful and useful quirk in hero work. A young hero who has explosive flames as a superpower with a similar temperament as a veteran hero who also has explosive flames as a superpower?
Coincidence? I think not!
So that's one comparable aspect right there. Next up is Endeavor's ambition. We may not know how Hotspot was exactly as a kid, but it's safe to say that his relentless ambition started from a young age. Even before he knew the name All Might, it's easy to imagine a young Endeavor seeing himself as the GOAT of heroes, the undisputed champion of justice. And we see that same aspiration in Kacchan. We know that he, like Deku, wanted to be like All Might. That by training his quirk, going to the right school, and starting off at the right agency, Bakugo could elevate himself to becoming a top-ranked hero. And frankly, it's due to their ambition that comes their next similarity: their indifference to other people. That's not to say that ambition alone turns people into jerks. We all need a good amount of ambition to get where we want to be in life. But it's the selfish, I need to get mine at all costs type of ambition that doesn't take others into consideration. That's what we're talking about here. When we look at how Bakugo acts during training exercises, you gotta ask yourself, do you really want this face to be the one saving your life? If you didn't know any better, you might even confuse him for the villain. Shoot, his own classmates say as much during one of their exercises. Boom Boy gets so wrapped up in the job itself that he almost forgets why he's doing it in the first place. And then there's how he treats his classmates. It's safe to say that he tolerates his fellow classmates at best, and we all know how he feels about Deku. He views the people that he sees on a daily basis almost as deterrents, roadblocks on his path to greatness, with Kirishima being the only person that he allows in his presence. Taking a look at Endeavor again, his desire for success is at such a level it makes Bakugos look uninspired. Endeavor has spent his entire adult life competing with the hero who never loses, and it's clear that being the Luigi to My Hero's Mario was not the end game that the Todoroki patriarch had in mind for himself. In fact, in a very odd pivot, he had appeared to have given up the idea of himself upsetting All Might as the greatest hero, but instead having his offspring do the job on his behalf. By entering a quirk marriage with Shoto's mother, Endeavor wanted an heir who would be the best version of himself, a child who would have his abilities and its advantages without any of its weaknesses. Even though Flame Man had 4 kids, with Shoto being the youngest, Endeavor declared that his youngest son will be the one to fulfill his lifelong dream. But we all know how that little experiment turned out. Enji treated his own son like a machine, a tool that only existed to serve his needs and fuel his ambition. Shoto would be the one to surpass All Might, no matter what the cost. Endeavor's emotional and psychological abuse of Shoto not only destroyed the father-son bond between the two heroes, in a cruel twist of irony, it made Shoto slightly weaker by his refusal to even use his father's power in the beginning of the series. And it wasn't just Shoto who felt the brunt of Fire Lord Todoroki's drive. Shoto's brothers and sisters got no love from their father as they served no purpose to him, and even his own wife, who bore his children and is just as responsible for their kids' strength as he is, was driven mad by his psychotic tactics. And the end result for both of our pyro heroes is the same. They both are talented and powerful heroes whom the public keep at arm's length. As we see when Endeavor finally reaches his goal to become the #1 hero, the average person's response to this is that of barely contained anxiety. The friendly, smiling hero that was All Might is now being replaced by this angry, snarling malcontent. People weren't really sure what to think about it all until he went and fought High End. And of Bakugo? Sure, his classmates don't hate him, but it'd be a stretch to say that they like him either. And who can blame them? I mean, would you want to willingly spend time with a loudmouth who has a temper and superiority complex? Didn't think so. For our two heroes, their attitudes have isolated them from those they're meant to protect and from potential allies. And no great hero exists in a vacuum. cause even All Might had sidekicks. So now that we've seen where Cant can end up if he's not careful, we can now discuss what he can do about it. If he truly wants to be like All Might, what can he do to turn himself around? If the last episodes of Season 3 are any indication, I believe that Bakugo can change and develop into the kind of hero that's not only powerful, but also an example for others to follow. I mean, just look at Endeavor. He realized on his own that the way that he's been doing things aren't going to get him where the world needs him to be as the newly minted top hero. And if he can make steps to change, our little Rage Beast can do the same. But how is Bakugo going to do that? Change for King Explosion Murder is going to happen in 3 steps. And the first one is realizing that winning isn't everything. Now, I get it. I know, that's typically the excuse that losers like to trot out when they, lose. But even those who do take home the trophy, they know that how you get the win and how you react when you win is just as important as the W itself. But this was something that Bakugo didn't quite learn when he was just a little boom boom boy. His most favorite trait about All Might is the fact that he's an undefeated victor. No matter how hard the villain or impossible the odds, All Might always found a way to come out on top. And that is a truth that little Cant has held on to this very day. And even though it's true, All Might never lost a fight in his career, having that laser focus on the "he wins all the time always" aspect of All Might, we see an immediate downside. You lose perspective of everything else about the man. His understanding of heroism as public service, the sacrifice that one must be willing to make in his line of work, all those factors must be considered as well, because all those things are what motivate All Might to ensure that he never lost. He didn't take on All for One because he thought it'd be cool to take down the bad guy that no one else could beat. He did it because it was his duty to serve those around him who may not be able to do what he could. All Might doesn't go into battle thinking, "Alright, it's winning time." His first thought is to ease the fear and panic of those around him by reassuring them that the situation, no matter how dire, would improve. That's why he says, "It's fine, because I'm here." And it's that aspect of his idol that Bakugo needs to internalize before he can make the next step as a hero. Being a pro hero is not about what you can get out of the experience, but what you can give to others. It's giving his time, energy, blood, and if necessary, his life for the safety of someone he likely doesn't even know. Sure, he can still enjoy the challenge and the thrill of taking on a villain and going all out, but he can't forget about the lives that he's going through all this trouble for. Bakugo's childlike idea of a hero as being the guy who wins needs to evolve to that of someone who serves innocent people at all costs. The second step in Cant's development to becoming a true hero is acknowledging that you can't do it all alone. Let's be real here. The main point of just about every anime ever is that the bonds of friendship can get you through anything. For those of us who have been on the anime train for a long time, we've seen friendships do everything from snapping someone out of depression to saving the entire world. However, it's clear that Bakugo is not an anime fan. This guy has made every effort to intentionally push away everyone and anyone who makes an attempt to care about his well-being. This is a result of his arrogant aura. He believes that everyone else is beneath him and that there's nothing that they can offer him that's worth his time. For anyone to try, it implies to him that they think that they're on his level, or even worse, on a higher plane than him. It would appear as though the only person that Bakugo respects in his class, or in his life for that matter, is the man's man, Red Riot. Because you'll notice that whenever his class is assigned a group activity, which is pretty much all the time, his reaction is to either stubbornly go about the mission his own way, have Kirishima by his side, or a combination of both. Stemming from his twisted concept of winning, he's convinced that if you don't win alone, then it doesn't count. After all, that's what All Might does, right? He's always the guy taking on the big bad all by himself without any assistance from anyone else ever. Except that's not the case. Yes, a good chunk of the time he's there as the last line of defense, and by the time he gets involved, he's the only one left with the energy to throw down, but even he will tell you that he doesn't do it alone. I already mentioned the fact that he's had sidekicks throughout his story career, whose sole purpose is to support the hero, And even in his last days as an active pro, he had a small circle of support to help him keep his secret of his condition hidden from the public. And of course, he wouldn't be the symbol of peace at all without his mentor passing on One for All to him. Throughout All Might's life, he's had people he could rely on, mentors, fellow heroes, and proteges to keep him focused and help him bear the burden that he chose to take on as the symbol of peace. And for our Blast Man to come even close to reaching the level of courage that All Might has dwelled in for years, he needs to take some humble pie. And he's been getting a pretty steady diet of that recently. If you start from the moment that Deku got into UA just like he did, he's watched as his classmate and alleged friend defeat him in battle, have clutch moments as a hero in training, pass the provisional license before he did, and the ice cream on that humble pie, Midoriya being the successor of his favorite hero. And that has happened while Deku has willingly accepted the help and tutelage of others. He doesn't care if it's from another classmate, a teacher, or anyone else. Deku has grown almost as a result of his understanding that change doesn't happen in a vacuum. That's why Bakugo has gone from being one of the top students to quickly falling behind. His classmates are learning from Midoriya's example and are learning from each other and are willing to experiment. All the while, Bakugo has made the least amount of change both in his quirk and as a person out of everyone else in his class, and the results are starting to catch up with him. And in line with the mentality of the show, the only way for Bakugo to get over his block is to embrace humility and cooperation. He's got to become willing to admit that maybe he's not always the smartest and strongest person in the room. He needs to see his fellow students not as extras in the story of his life, but see them as invaluable friends and future colleagues in the unending battle of good versus evil. And lastly, the final step in Cant-chan's character rehab, and the step that ties everything together, is that he needs to genuinely care about other people. You can't be a hero and also be this snarling, surly man who constantly looks like he's about to snap somebody's neck. Look, Batman can get away with that routine because he's already proven himself a true hero and someone who, despite his attitude, still puts others before himself. But for Bakugo, the only thing he seems to care about is himself. He will need to find a motivation for metaphorically putting on the cape that goes beyond his own career goals. Is there anyone he thinks about in particular that can spur him on in tough battles? Are there any words of wisdom from those he respects that he can fall back on? What is the future that Bakugo wants to fight for? Those are the kinds of questions our hero without a name needs to answer. Like I said in the Porter video, you can't be in a profession that involves caring for people and also be a hack. People will see through your concealed contempt for humanity, and in Bakugo's case, he doesn't even try to hide it. You can't instill safety and trust in people if they're so afraid of you because they think you're the bad guy. The all-time greatest hero is one of your teachers. Utilize him. Have him teach you people skills. Let him show you how to channel your natural aggression on the battlefield, but also how to keep it there. He can give you practical advice on why it's not best to skulk around growling every word you say. And there's actually one more step that Bakugo can take to getting back on track and making gains as a hero to be. But you'll need to come back in 2 weeks to find out what that important step is when that surprise I mentioned at the beginning of the video comes around. Just make sure you're subscribed and you do all the YouTube stuff so that you'll be ready when that video drops. In My Hero Academia, Bakugo started out practically as a bully stereotype. The loud, obnoxious jerk who puts down the protagonist and tells him that his dream is a waste of time. From that point on, a lot of us started creating narratives in our heads as to how Bakugo's story would go down. That he would become the Vegeta to Deku's Goku, the eternal rival who would treat him with derision, but who would secretly respect him. And although the rival aspect of their relationship has certainly held up, other parts of his potential arc didn't quite pan out. For example, how many of us thought that when Bakugo got captured by the League of Villains that he would actually join them and switch sides? I'll admit it, I was one of those fans. I was so ready for this apparent villain wannabe to just drop the act and go evil already, so that Deku could Detroit smash him into submission and prove once and for all who was the better of the two. But despite our fan theories, Bakugo genuinely wants to do the right thing and to be a hero. He just doesn't have the self-awareness to realize that just about everything he does projects the exact opposite energy that he wishes to convey. And at the heart of Bakugo's disconnect and his current struggles in the anime is his lack of self-awareness. Not having a clue about how your words and actions impact others tends to lead to confusion, frustration, and isolation. 3 words that describe Bakugo's situation right now. Confusion as to how his classmates, and especially Deku, have surpassed him in school, frustration at the situation he's found himself in, and the isolation that he's willingly put upon himself. But as much as I loathed Bakugo as a character early in the anime's run, I found myself slowly warming up to the guy. I do want to see him change. I want to see him progress in UA and become the hero I know he can be. But it won't happen until he's willing to accept help, come to terms with his own limits, and reevaluate his ideas of heroism. And I believe that's the biggest takeaway for Bakugo's character arc. We need to be willing to see ourselves as who we are before we can grow into who we want to be. And we can't do that alone. We may know ourselves best, but we have aspects of ourselves that we either are oblivious to or we choose not to see. We need the humility to admit and confront those blind spots, the support system to help us improve, and the selflessness to see that growth includes benefiting someone other than ourselves. We've seen Endeavor begin to take those steps by talking to All Might about the burden of being the #1 hero, and I hope we see a change in the Flame Man in the next season as he tries to carry on the tradition of the symbol of peace. And if Endeavor can do it, Bakugo can too, because I don't want to see Bakugo end up becoming the next Endeavor. I want to see how a character with that level of confidence, talent, and ambition channels all that for the greater good. And with the right people and the right perspective, we can do that as well. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what other characters and franchises you'd like me to discuss next. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video is ready. Until next time.